Hi, everybody. Welcome to all our attendees today, as well as our guests, Ryan Barnett, CEO of Vetted Security Solutions, and Ariel Rodgers, CEO of CitySpan Communications, as well as my colleague, Jan Hazlbauer, Chief Product Officer at FF Group. My name is Clifton Greeff, Business Development Manager for USA and Middle East markets. The last topic of our summit is dedicated to the future and how to improve public safety with AI and surveillance. Today, we have the opportunity to get closer to our customers and understand their needs and expectations. And there's no better than our partners who are already deploying, these public safety and law enforcement surveillance systems with our technology and many others, not just with us. Of course, we believe we do our best for the communities all around the world. And we are not only selling our products, but we truly believe that we are contributing to, a smarter and safer world. However, it's our partners who are actually in touch with the real world implementations and represent the end customer at the end of the day. No better than to have our guest Ryan Barnett, CEO of Vetted Security Solutions, a company who's mastered the integration of various hardware and software and multiple backend solutions. And our second guest is Ariel Rodgers, CEO of CitySpan Communications, a company focused on public safety and security, as well as a vast experience on ANPR and safe city solutions. So thanks for joining us today, guys. We appreciate it. So we got lots of questions. Let's see if we can get through them all. And let's see if we take a deep dive into applications, specifically for law enforcement and ANPR and also other technologies. And, we want to be able to chat about the other technologies which are influencing, our ability to, help public safety and law enforcement. Ariel, I think I'll ask you the first question. And what benefits do you currently see with the AI-powered edge ANPR applications in the field for law enforcement agencies?
Well, obviously, within the law enforcement segment, you have numerous sensor platforms that have for years generated, different alerts and different requirements for operators. The big benefit of AI, and I think in a previous session you handled it as data fusion, is the ability for AI power to actually start looking at some of those alerts and looking at filtering some of that data so that the operators are not so inundated with multiple systems at a single time. For a long time now, certainly for the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a big push to get to a single pane of glass in the crime center, fusion center world, where all of these sensors have been brought together into a single platform, a single solution, so that you are looking at a real-time or a near-time, I won't say real-time, a near-time view of what's actually happening out there in the real world. And we are trying to whittle down all of these various alerts and notifications into things that are real, time constrained, and prioritized. So I think the benefit of the early adoption of AI, it has been to kind of start to whittle down these numerous alerts and potential alerts, or even spurious alerts, and filter out some of that noise into stuff that is real, timely, and actionable.
Yeah, so that's something I was saying to Jan just now. People are not discerning between deep learning AI and generative AI and where that sits and how it belongs, and everyone just uses AI, right? So interesting, the topics that we have there. So thanks for that. It's also great input, Ryan. I think with all the data that we created these days from edge AI applications, and you've got massive experience in this. What do you feel is the best way to manage all of this data coming in?
Management of it, luckily, isn't my problem. It's trying to ingest as much as possible, and I think that's really where AI comes into play. It's more Do you want data? Yes, no. I think that's a pretty binary response for most, at least of our law enforcement partners. The answer is yes. But then historically, to second Ariel, if you start creating invalid alerts or bad alerts, they start being ignored, right? So using AI to really curtail and ensure, one, the alerts that you're getting traditionally from LPR, which FF Group's accuracy has been phenomenal in cutting down on false hits within the LPR space. But now that you're getting into using AI to go through massive amounts of data sets from both LPR and other sensors, you're really able to start creating more purpose-built analytics for various applications. A great example of what you guys have already done on this call is on the noise pollution side, right? Like you tie a tag, which is a unique identifier for an individual, with any other data set, and then you really have some purpose-built solutions that can do some really cool things.
Yeah, totally agree. And then when we're looking at collecting all of this data, we have always a very big question that everyone's got hanging over is, what is the, what do we see from, vehicle data and license plate and privacy laws? Ariel, you're heavily involved in that sort of side of things. What are your thoughts on that and the general response to the public when they ask that question?
So again, if I was sat in Europe, my answer would be very different to what it's going to be for being sat in the States. So we are very lucky here that there is literally on the statute books no expectation of privacy in public in the United States. So we are not as constrained into what we can and cannot do with regards to data in the public sphere. However, when you start combining some of that public data with unique identifiers with regards to individuals or places or times and dates and everything else, then it gets very, very much more complicated in what we can and cannot do with that. And obviously within the law enforcement world, there is information that stays within the public safety realm where those parts are combined, and then there are parts that are transposable to other agencies, other locations, which is just the raw public data. So the simple answer to privacy in the States is that it is less constrained, and there is more of an adoption of it by de facto, as opposed to looking for public response on what do you think about this. It's happening because it's allowed, rather than it's not being as constrained as it. If I was sat in London, it'd be a very different answer. If I was sat in Paris, it'd be a very different answer. So I think the answer to that question is it really depends on the market and the area you're sat in, as to what those rules and regulations look like and what you therefore can and cannot do through the technical interface.
I can totally confirm. We have the experience. US, Australia, New Zealand, totally, let's say, open. Europe, Germany, closed totally. France, even, it's not allowed to automatically read the plates. Other countries, more or less, but let's keep it on our private server. Don't let it go over the borders and so on. So totally different stories.
And Ryan, he's a bit more up to date than I am on certain state legislation where, I think, Ryan, I'm right in thinking there's 2 states where LPR is banned now for anything other than law enforcement.
Yeah, might have grown. I know North Dakota, Vegas has restrictions on private collection. Arkansas does as well. But to the Supreme Court level federally, it's obviously been, as you're well aware, defended all the way up to the very top. Where you're seeing some more recent state action that's an interesting one to track. The state of Virginia has House Bill 2724 in assembly currently that restricts and limits usage to specific types of crimes, as well as provides authority and expectation of the state to audit individual agencies' usage. Historically, especially in commercial vendor systems, there is the expectation for audit. Whether there was the practicality of that being done is a different discussion, I would think. But it's definitely a topic that continues to gain traction as the total number of sensors deployed across really the country has multiplied and expanded to the point that you have sensor density allowing you to see a whole lot more historically than just getting alerts. So it's interesting to see where that's going. It's definitely a topic our government relations teams are tracking in multiple states, and definitely helping to try and influence policy that is pro LPR without being anti-privacy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, obviously managing that data responsibly as well. Yeah, 100%. And if we look at the other side, what technology trends, I would say, in ANPR and vehicle attribute data collection do you see in the future that will be able to assist law enforcement and public safety agencies? I think, a couple of guys have touched on, reading stickers or something that's different in a vehicle. What are your thoughts on that? Ryan, I'm asking you.
Gotcha. So yeah, man, that's been pretty common, and you've seen the make model recognition obviously pick up. There's multiple vendors that have specific, call it thumbprint, fingerprint identification for various stickers, trailer ball hitches, identifying marks on the vehicle. So that's definitely a very common practice. A lot of times, the nighttime performance, which is one of the amazing things that we've seen with the Axis cameras and with really the FF Group engine, is we still get even nighttime images that give us some of those identifying marks, sometimes vehicle color, right? Just depending on the amount of ambient light. So that's a huge advantage we've had with FF Group, whereas other LPRs historically, you don't really get the nighttime performance. So one of the ways that's been historically dealt with is looking back over that historical data, finding a daytime image and overlaying that daytime image on nighttime images, which can also lead to inconsistencies in accurate alerting. And another reason why AI, from the very beginning question, to help mitigate some of those false alerts is very important. But the optic quality you guys have with both Axis and Hanwha, both of your partners, has really shown through with being able to enhance some of those features with the images we're getting, even at times running those post-processed through other systems to pull out other identifying information that's useful for our customer base.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is make and model at night. I'm looking at my CPO there. So yeah, a very good point. It's a massive request, and we definitely something to work towards. Ariel, I'll post you the same question. What sort of technologies are you seeing, to be able to assist these agencies? And, it doesn't even have to be ANPR. Sometimes I think about, Ryan Roof explained to me how important it is managing power, right? So, that sort of thing, what other technologies do you see, assisting, I would say these law enforcement agencies and public safety to gather more information, get more usable data, and to be able to take action?
So I think what we're starting to see is more of an open adoption of multi-sensor integration for the same environment. So again, in your previous session, you touched on sound with Sorama, and noise pollution. That's huge. I think, again, in a previous section, you touched on weather data for city-wide management. So, for example, we see very different traffic patterns when there's heavy rain, or when there's a storm approaching, or when the weather is doing something different. Traffic will tend to use different routes because maybe roads are flooded out, or rivers are cresting and you can't use the bridges, or whatever it may be. So a simple thing like a changing weather pattern can affect traffic flow and people movement, which in its own right affects crime, because things change very dynamically. So I think the adoption of multi-sensor platforms at distributed locations throughout cities, or on transport routes, whatever it may be, is coming. I'm seeing a little bit of movement towards, moving towards RFID tags in the future. So yes, you'll still have a license plate, but embedded within that license plate or within that vehicle or within the renewal sticker will be an RFID tag. We can now read that, match the two. So that's going to look at helping with things like, plate cloning. It's going to help with things like insurance, with, valid registration. So there's all sorts of additional data sets that can be pulled out if you have the right sensors in the right places. We may, in the future see, it would be really nice, standardized state to state kind of databases for registration details, insurance details, and everything else. Because one of the difficulties now is trying to find where a vehicle from out of state, is it still valid? Is it registered? Is it insured? And you have to go through several different entity databases to get to that answer, and it's time consuming. So standards and integration are the key things within law enforcement, or the adoption of. And I think, again, more video analytics overlaid with things like LPR data, overlaid with things like noise pollution, overlaid with things like even, more passive sensors that are out there, will allow us to get a more granular picture on a, vehicle by vehicle picture, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I've always thought at looking at vehicle attribute collection similar to people counting in a way, right? You want to be able to associate it with all of those other sensors to understand those patterns as well. Although there's a lot more going on, someone walking through a door than and then what's actually happening at an intersection or a main road. So I think that a lot more data to collect from that perspective. But what do you think about no plate detection? Do you think that's something that's going to assist in law enforcement as well?
No plate detection, or what was known previously as missing plate detection, is huge. I mean, no matter what state you're in, it's a crime not to display a valid license plate. And there are normally reasons that they are hiding them, or masking them, or removing them, or doing so. It focuses one's attention. Why does that vehicle not have a tag? Has it fallen off? Are they doing something they shouldn't be doing? Or is it more of a case of they're trying to hide, themselves from LPR or even toll fraud? I mean, that's a huge one.
Yes, yeah.
So yes, no plate or missing plate detection is very useful in law enforcement. It has been around in other systems for a number of years, but we are waiting with bated breath for FF Group to add it to your portfolio.
It's coming soon.
You can tell me a lot better than I can.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on the no plate detection?
Yeah, same goes. It's an amazing feature. The one that comes into mind for next is vanity plates. So there's an article actually this morning out of Suffolk County in New York City where vanity plates are just absolutely crushing the PD's ability to go handle enforcement and enforcement action with investigative data or historical investigative data. So solving the missing plate entirely is absolutely the best first step, and then seeing if there's any way to use AI to identify inconsistencies in the plate detections to identify vanity plates, I would say would be the next step.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Jan, it's the balls in your court. Anything you would like to add there, Jan?
I mean, look, there's a lot of things we haven't touched at all, but there is definitely a lot to do, or a lot we have planned to add to license plate make, model, color, type. It's damaged cars. or whatever additional attributes, like on the jeeps you have these snorkels, especially in the remote areas. It's very popular in Australia, everywhere. Or whatever roof boxes, these additional features of the cars. It's something with AI we see easily how to do that. The same approach. Basically, you can classify cars not based on the vehicle type, but based on the purpose. So if it's fire brigade, if it's police car, if it's delivery or something like this, these cars have something in common, and you can basically train the neural networks for that. And I believe this is also something which will come quite soon. On some other things we are already working.
And I suppose, guys, it's our last question. Thanks, Jan. From a quick deployment perspective, and when I started coming to the US, I was totally shocked. There's the trailers everywhere. So it's very different business for us to see. We tried that in South Africa, and it didn't really work. So any technologies that you guys can think that would be able to assist, I would say fast deployment type environments that you think would start improving in those capabilities. Ryan, if you want to go first, or Ariel, I think you're going to go first anyway, so you go for it.
Go for it, Ariel. All you.
So one of the big issues with deploying anything anywhere has been obviously power and infrastructure, power, communications, and the ability to. It's great collecting that data, but if you can't bring it back to use it, it's next to useless. So we have seen a big uptake, and certainly since I've known Ryan in the last 10 years or so, massive uptake in solar-based solutions. So remote trailers, even now remote solar poles in more rural areas, with power management and battery management and all the great things that lithium iron phosphate brought us, the ability to have those long run times. And I guess it with LPR specifically, it's all about density. It's great knowing that a vehicle crossed a certain intersection, and if you're going to interdict that vehicle and do something about it, great. But if you are just, where has that vehicle been? And I'm doing investigative pattern analysis. Where is he going? Is he doing it, several times a month, several times a week? Is it I don't want to diversify too much, but is it a drug courier? Is it a money courier? Is it a human trafficking issue? In order to do that and to do that reliably, you need the volume of sensors along those routes. The issue is, and it's not just in the States, but there are numerous countries where there's just no infrastructure in some of these locations. So having the ability to deploy sensors at places where you don't have utilities has become crucial, and that's been a huge uptake. The other thing is rapidly deploying or rapidly redeploying sensors to areas of interest that change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Crime patterns shift constantly, and redeploying your assets to, without saying the word, ring fence those areas of specific interest has become a big play for law enforcement. It's great if you have one or two that are permanently mounted and are doing their job, but when you're trying to look at specific targets entering and exiting in relation to transient crime, where criminals are coming from other parts, coming in, doing the crime and leaving, the ability to deploy mobile sensors to a certain extent, or rapidly deployable sensors, is paramount to combating that. So I would say to you that the less devices you have in that housing. So, for example, having the ANPR on the camera as opposed to having to have a separate ANPR processor, as we always used to do, has massively reduced power draw, which has given us longer lifetime on the solar arrays and on the batteries. The same with communications. The 5G adoption has come on massively, in the US, and we're getting more for less with less power consumption. And now even with, Starlink is another big player in those really rural locations where you don't even have cell coverage. The small compact Starlink terminals or equivalents are paying dividends now, because we have the ability to back all that data, not just in the LPR, chunk by chunk by chunk, but actually the live stream as well, or the playback, even if we have recording medias.
Yeah, interesting point. 5G, but one thing I didn't think of was Starlink. We used to sometimes do these satellite routers, which is that's a little bit easier to utilize from a mobile perspective.
It doesn't, in my mind, and from historically, it doesn't matter what the sensor is. If you don't have power and you don't have communications, it's useless.
Yeah, 100%. Ryan, you want to add to that before we do a close?
I'm gonna second what Ariel said there. I mean, we've encountered infrastructure cost and getting LPR sensors up of anywhere from a couple $1,000s up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. You also have to factor lane closures and other things that come into play when you're running that infrastructure. So in certain environments, we've had $18,000 an hour cost for shutting down highways to go deploy LPR into. So when you can take away some of that deployment cost, and when I say some of, you're talking about a $1,500 to a $7,000 sensor to compare, depending on who's you're buying. But you're talking about being able to power these things off very, very low amount of solar power. While Ariel was talking, I grabbed just a quick look at, where is it? I've got a headless unit up, and I'll share my screen real quick just to reinforce that point. I mean, this is a live test system running with FF Group and a Axis Q1800 camera that's drawing a total of 13 watts. I mean, we've been running this stably with a 60-watt solar panel.
Amazing.
For over able to slim down your battery, your solar, like what you're actually needing. We're using some router modem packages that allow us to load containers there on the enclosure. So we're actually running software side by side and hope to, some of the software we're also running to support some of our customers, hope to run that side by side with FF Group as Axis continues to increase the processing resources on their core chipset. And also very much looking forward to working with the Hanwha line more as you guys have extended coverage into their series, as we do have some customers very involved with that platform as well.
Yeah, thank you for that information. I think you know how to use this program better than we do already. Thank you so much, man. Guys, well, I really thank you, and I really appreciate your input, and thank you very much for the attention of all our listeners. And I think this is the end of the entire session of 4 sessions. So we really appreciate all the guests that have joined as well before, and thank you for your time. Ariel, Ryan, always a pleasure to chat to you guys as well. And Jan, thanks, man.